Let's bring in our think tank tonight to break down the conspiracy theory here. Joining us tonight, Joseph Marrone, great criminal defense attorney. He's in Philadelphia tonight. DeWitt Lacey, civil rights attorney, former criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. Or is it Beverly Hills, perhaps, where DeWitt Lacey is tonight? Also with us, Tiffany Porter, municipal court judge, criminal defense attorney in Georgia. All right, Joseph, let me start with you. Should the defense be chomping at the bit here, being able to defend a conspiracy charge when you've got an alleged conspiracy with 3 people and one of them is dead and will never appear inside that courtroom, and there may not be any written communication, recorded communication, and there won't be anyone who's an alleged part of the conspiracy testifying about a conspiracy?
Well, you have to wait and see. We're at the preliminary hearing stage, and it's a critical time for the defense. Even though the defendants won't testify and the defense won't put on any evidence, it's an opportunity to do some cross-examination of the detectives, of the people involved in the investigation, to see if they can start to punch some holes in this case. Based on the evidence that's being put out in the media and what we know, it's almost inevitable that they're going to be held for court. The standard's very low. They just have to have enough evidence where there's reasonable belief that obviously this matter can get to a jury. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Remember, you got to keep thinking that there's no murder charges here, and that's what the authorities really want. And they're going to do everything they can to kind of pin these two against each other to see if one eventually cracks, because they have no other evidence to bring murder charges. But in this particular case, this is at the preliminary hearing stage. It's an excellent opportunity for the defense to really kind of gain some traction and build their case for trial so that they have a legitimate chance to defend it.
Judge Porter, you know, conspiracy sometimes is easy to prove and sometimes it's a little bit difficult. I don't think they're necessarily going to have any sort of written communications about this so-called plan. I think prosecutors are just going to have to lay out the whole story and feed the jury, ultimately when this goes to trial, a big dose of common sense. Will that be enough?
It should be enough at the preliminary stage, because this is pretty much just a fishing expedition to see what's out there and what evidence will eventually be presented. Really, in Idaho, I mean, the steps are just, you know, agreement is enough. So there's not a lot that you need in Idaho to really that makes it hard to get to a conspiracy charge. I believe that the prosecutors have enough, and just with the evidence surrounding this case, what they have right now, even though circumstantial, I think it's enough to get conspiracy charges.
DeWitt, how do they connect a dead man to all of this? Because Alex Cox, I mean, looking at what has taken place here, we know he's killed at least one person. He's suspected and suspected to be part of this conspiracy. It seems like his hand is all over everything here, but he's dead. He's not going to testify. Is that going to be a huge issue and a huge problem here?
At trial, absolutely. And the defense have got to be rubbing their hands together about that one, because they have the classic empty chair defense in Alex Cox, who not only killed the ex-husband, but also the cell phone records pinged him to the residence, and him being there for a particular amount of time for on three occasions. I think everybody's opinions as far as the preliminary hearing are right. They'll get beyond the preliminary hearing. But the evidence to go forward at trial at this point, I think, is pretty thin. Now, albeit there are going to be some assumptions that could be made. I mean, this is this woman's children that they're talking about. So there's going to be great concern, I would imagine, that any jury would have in regards to this mom not really understanding or knowing the whereabouts of her children. However, there's got to be evidence. And right now, all the evidence seems to point to Alex Cox, and there's not really any evidence which would show any type of agreement or commitment between the three of them to do some and perform some criminal act.
Joseph Marrone, I know these two have misled and lied at times to police about the children and where they were. But if you were stepping into this case, right, as the great criminal defense attorney you are, and you wanted to choose a client who you would have a better opportunity of being able to defend in this case, is it Chad Daybell or is it Lori Vallow Daybell?
Oh, without a doubt, it's Chad. I mean, Lori is the one that had the direct responsibility as being the mother who lied to the local authorities about knowledge of their whereabouts. She covered evidence up. I mean, she's got a real problem. She's going to be hated by the jury. Anybody who disregards their children, it's such a difficult time. No, I think obviously Chad's the guy that you want to represent.
Judge Porter, if you do represent Chad Daybell, how do you explain dead children buried in your backyard? The same backyard where you're burying pets, the same backyard where you allege that you shot the raccoon and buried it.
Well, this will be the blame game at this point. You want to point the finger either at the person that's dead and that he could have done this and was the mastermind behind this. And then, he may have to lean against her and say, she was in charge. She knew what was going on and that he didn't have a clue as to the children and their whereabouts.
When we come back, we're going to switch gears. R. Kelly in court, got a bunch of trials, but there's one in New York where prosecutors are treating R. Kelly kind of like he's El Chapo or maybe John Gotti. We'll talk about that when we return.
Really, you're trying to protect the rights of the defendant. I mean, the whole point was to have a jury of your peers, step forward as part of the process and, impose judgment upon you by finding the facts and rendering a verdict. And when you do all these weird things like cloak them with anonymity and, not release their names, not let the attorneys know who they are, not giving us background information, that's a real danger to a defendant, to have someone basically in a star chamber-like fashion deciding your fate with the bonus of anonymity.
That's Michael Leonard, one of the attorneys for R&B superstar R. Kelly. Talking about what's happening in their New York trial. R. Kelly's got cases in Illinois, he's got them in New York, in state court, in federal court. But in this case in New York, prosecutors want all the jurors to remain anonymous for their safety. Because if R. Kelly, they're alleging that if R. Kelly finds out who they are, they may be intimidated once they hear the evidence and the testimony from the alleged victims, the accusers in the case, that R. Kelly is dangerous and it may intimidate these jurors. This is what you do for like John Gotti. This is what you do for maybe Saddam Hussein. I spoke to Steve Greenberg, the other attorney for R. Kelly, about this earlier tonight. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think in this case it should be an uphill battle for him. I was shocked that they made the request in a case like this. As you indicated before, it's for Saddam Hussein and El Chapo and John Gotti and those kind of cases where someone can do something. No one's going to be able to do anything. Now, they asked for a couple of other things which we didn't oppose. They asked that the jurors be escorted to and from the courthouse. They asked that the jurors be kept together during the day so they're not influenced by outside sources. And I like that idea. When Weinstein was getting tried and the jurors were having to go through the throngs of people, the one day there were the dancing women outside chanting about how he was guilty. I don't want a jury exposed to that. And I agree with the prosecutors that they shouldn't be.
But not agreeing that these jurors should be anonymous. How unusual is this? And is there any chance of it happening? Let's bring back in our think tank. Judge, let me go to you first, Judge Porter. This is an unusual request for a case like this. R. Kelly, yes, accused of some really bad things, some really serious things, but he's not John Gotti.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I don't think that this is a good move for the prosecution. You leave the door open for appeal after appeal. This case will never end if it begins this way. If this is what we are looking at the very beginning, this case will never end. And Mr. Kelly will have all of the everything afforded to him by law to appeal and to reject everything dealing with his trial.
Yeah, let's put up on the screen what the prosecution is alleging here, because this is fascinating. It says, R. Kelly is likely to be perceived by the jurors as capable of inflicting violence. Witnesses will testify that Kelly physically and violently assaulted them. The fact that jurors are aware that their identities are publicly known may subtly and unconsciously impair their impartiality. DeWitt Lacey, how dangerous is R. Kelly? Is this a guy that might take out a juror?
I think that might be a stretch too far. Okay, that I don't know of any information that he will take someone out. However, he does have, as you said, cases throughout the country, seemingly, and for child sex trafficking, for rape. Those are serious offenses and should be taken that way. But I don't think it's fair to subject him then to a jury that's completely anonymous. Yes, I think there have to be protections that are offered to jurors so that they're not subjected to harassment during their ingress or egress from the courthouse. But to make the defense try the case with a totally anonymous jury, I think is stretched too far.
Joseph Marrone, I'm not an R. Kelly fan. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. I don't even like his music, I'll be honest with you. I was never really a huge fan.
I like it.
But I'm a fan of fairness. I mean, the arguments that are being made by prosecutors, and I'm a former one, seem to apply to any case. They would apply to any and every case. So it seems to me that either our jury system should be anonymous all the time or shouldn't be anonymous in this case.
Yeah, listen, there's criminal cases all the time that are tried with violence that there's not anonymous jurors. And, you got to go back to the history of R. Kelly. I mean, the government, whether it's federal or state, have a bitter pill in their mouth about this. He beat a case a while back. It involves, obviously, a predatory type sexual offenses to minors. So, it doesn't sit well. So they're doing everything possible at this point, taking the biggest shots they can take, try to win at all costs. They know they're not going to win this, that they can get anything out of it. If anything, they're going to probably season the public a little bit, the potential jury pool. They'll hear about it. Maybe they get the edge there, but they're doing everything they can to win. They know they're not going to have any success here. They know that no jury is going to be anonymous. The sequestration, which is another element to it, there may be some limitation to it, but it's not going to go very far. And again, it'll end up same as the Weinstein trial. I mean, they're gonna allow these jurors to be known, and they're not going to be sequestered.
Judge Porter, R. Kelly is a celebrity. Usually I say advantage celebrity in these cases, but is it advantage R. Kelly in light of what the public thinks of him now, especially after that docuseries, Surviving R. Kelly?
I don't believe he has any advantage. It's been really R. Kelly versus the world, because there have been people after him and wanting him to be brought to justice for years and years and years. And I mean, it is going to be very hard on the defense side to get people who have never heard of him or don't have any kind of biases towards him. This is going to be hard for R. Kelly. I mean, people have been trying to get him for a very long time. And I think that whatever they can get to stick, that's what's going to happen ultimately.
Go ahead, DeWitt. I think you're trying to jump in there. I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
Yeah, if I could jump in, and I'm going to have to disagree with Her Honor here. Although there are people who are very suspect of R. Kelly and may want to see him convicted, He also has a lot of fans. A lot of people like I Believe I Can Fly. A lot of people like a 12 play, and the list go on and on. He is an R&B superstar, and there are already accounts of people, women included, who believe that he is being unfairly charged. So some of this may be may give the defense the drum that they can beat of being treated unfairly because of his celebrity. So I mean, we'll see.
But don't you think after the documentary came out that made it even worse for Mr. Kelly? I'm not saying that he's just totally going to be found guilty on each and every charge, but I believe that it really makes it harder with all of the accounts that were put forward in that documentary that the world saw. I mean, we can't say that it's just because he has fans and has this great following that all of a sudden his worries are just going to go away.
I think you're right, Your Honor. I don't think the worries completely go away. However, I think there's something to be said about his group of fans who may, in fact, I guess, vindicate him through a verdict of not guilty. Now, look, the documentary is one thing, and it may certainly have cemented his guilt in the minds of many and several folks. But I would imagine that there are many and several folks on the other side of that coin who feel a little bit differently. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I don't know that, it is a closed book deal for the prosecution.
I mean,
Speaking of celebrities, folks. Go ahead, Joseph. I'll give you the final word.
One interesting point. This is a guy that sold tens and tens of millions of records. There's a lot of people out there that love this man and see him in a different way. If you get one juror on there that sees that person and they feel that he's being over-prosecuted, I mean, he walks. And the defense knows that, and they're going to play that card. So that's something you got to think about.
You know what I love? Joseph Marrone just said he sold a lot of records. And they probably were records or cassettes or CDs, 8-tracks, and maybe some downloads too. All right. Speaking of celebrities, by the way, folks, Court TV's latest podcast is out. And this week, we take a closer look at the Johnny Depp libel suit. This is out of London. Depp suing a British tabloid that published an article referring to him as a wife beater. Depp's ex-wife, actress Amber Heard, testified that Depp was frequently violent with her when he was impaired by drugs and alcohol. Win or lose, this trial is not likely to end well for Johnny Depp.
A libel case is about your reputation, right? And that's how you determine damages. Have you been seriously damaged? Your reputation. I would say, yes, Johnny Depp's reputation has been seriously damaged. But I don't know if it was so much from the Sun or if it was from this trial. Right? Because in case you missed the article the first time, now you've got this, this month-long drama taking place overseas to remind you. And now all of this evidence is on the internet forever.
All right, check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts and check the latest on the case at courttv.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae with your legal news break, starting with a new update coming from the District Attorney's Office in Los Angeles in the case of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. That update is there's no movement yet. Weinstein is in a New York prison serving a 23-year sentence for his convictions in New York earlier this year. He faces additional charges of sexual misconduct in the Golden State. Those prosecutors are waiting to extradite him to the opposite coast so that he can face those 2 counts. In a press release today, District Attorney Jackie Lacey says her office requested temporary custody of the 68-year-old inmate back on July 20th. Right now, they're waiting for officials in New York to set a hearing to make that extradition happen. The pending charges against the formerly acclaimed producer include rape and sexual battery based on allegations by 2 female victims. And a former mayor wants out of prison, and it's over 10 years early for his sentence to be up. He's asking for a compassionate coronavirus release. Philip Giordano was the mayor of Waterbury, Connecticut before he was arrested in 2001. He's convicted of sexually abusing 2 children, the daughter and niece of his then girlfriend, in his City Hall office. Giordano says a chronic spinal cord condition placed him at a high risk in the federal South Carolina prison where he's incarcerated. The 57-year-old is not scheduled to be released right now until 2033. That's it for your Court TV News Break. Vinny, back to you.
Thanks so much, Julia. Appreciate it. Next story comes to us from South Georgia in Statesboro, Georgia, and it involves the shooting of a 17-year-old girl. But the man who shot her is claiming self-defense, is claiming stand your ground, is claiming he was the victim of a racially motivated attack. Julie Janae has more.
And I just want him home. I just want him home. He doesn't deserve to be in there.
21-year-old William Marcus Wilson has been in a Georgia jail since mid-June. He faces charges of felony murder and aggravated assault for the shooting death of a teenager. His family doesn't deny that he pulled the trigger, but his sister Chelsea Burnett says there's more the system should consider.
He was truly scared for his entire life.
She says her brother feared for his life when he opened fire on a truck of white teens the morning of June 14th. The car's driver was allegedly trying to run Wilson's car off the road, while others yelled racist slurs, according to his sister.
He had a right to stand his ground. He felt like his life was threatened, and I 100% believe that.
A gunshot killed 17-year-old Haley Hutchinson, a passenger in the truck. Burnett questions why her brother, who is biracial, is accused of murder despite his self-defense claims.
If he were white and his skin showed that he was fully white, he would not have ever been put in handcuffs.
It's a case drawing attention to the small town of Statesboro, Georgia, and bringing scrutiny from civil rights groups over who stand your ground laws protect.
We see tons of instances where stand your ground applies to the accused, and Mark Wilson's case does not appear to be one of them, and it appears to be based off of his race, and it's wrong.
Georgia is one of 27 states with stand your ground laws that approve the use of deadly force in self-defense. Another Georgia prosecutor initially concluded that the now high-profile death of Ahmaud Arbery was justified under that same theory of law.
The Ahmaud Arbery case is very much linked to this case, and not just by geography.
The color of my brother's skin has so much to do with why he is behind bars right now.
A redacted police report of the shooting says that the officers were responding to a call about a possible drive-by shooting close to 1 a.m. on June 14th. By then, Hutchinson had been taken to the hospital with a fatal gunshot wound. In a police press conference captured by WSAV, Haley's family begged the public for information.
Our state, our counties need this message right here more than anything. There can be mercy, there can be forgiveness, but justice, it has to be served.
Wilson's sister says he had already spoken to police by the time of that press conference. And according to his family,
Thank you for pushing Taco Bell.
The shouting of racial slurs began after he left this Taco Bell drive-thru with his girlfriend, who was white.
When you have a car full of young white men in South Georgia calling your girlfriend an N-word lover and trying to literally run you off the road and is hanging out of the car shooting all kinds of words and explicatives, you can't really tell what's next.
At some point, Wilson fired his gun, killing Hutchinson. 3 days after the shooting on June 17th, he turned himself in.
He was worried about our mom more than anything, and I just told him, like, I got mama, like, I got her, and I just gave him a hug. I mean, there was no words to say. I didn't need him to explain or justify to me anything because I know who he is.
The president of the Georgia NAACP, Reverend James Woodall, is one of many claiming prosecutors are targeting the wrong people.
Ms. Hutchinson is a victim. She was murdered, but she wasn't murdered by Mr. Wilson. She was murdered by the gentlemen that were in the vehicle at the time of her death.
Wilson's sister sees it as a test of faith.
society's ugliness truly showed its colors that night. And that's hard for people who grow up wanting to see the light in everything.
All right, so the question is, when are you allowed to start firing your gun at another vehicle? That's the question of this trial, all right? Because it's stand your ground, so I'm standing my ground. At what point, what has to happen for me to legally be able to do that? Let's bring back in our think tank, DeWitt Lacey. DeWitt Lacey, let me start with you. At what point is someone permitted to start opening fire at another vehicle?
It goes right to the heart of these stand your ground laws. And, generally, I will let you know that I'm not in favor of these stand your ground laws. But I have witnessed how these stand your ground laws have been applied when the accused is, or the victim, the person who was shot, was an African American or a Black person. And the shooter is a white person. And I don't think you can disregard those, I guess, that contextual or that context of this incident. Look, if you're in South Georgia and you have a car full of young white teens yelling racial slurs at you and trying to run you off the road, I think the obvious assumption is that these folks are trying to kill you and that they will try and kill you. So I would imagine in that circumstance, it would be justified to defend yourself with lethal force. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the courts.
Judge Porter, you're in Georgia. This is a Georgia case. Your thoughts? I mean, is the key fact, like DeWitt Lacey is saying, the key fact is trying to run them off the road? And if so, how do you prove that?
Right. Well, the good thing is he has his girlfriend that was there. So she's a witness to this entire ordeal. But I believe that race is going to play a major part in this case. And it's unfortunate. But we're talking about South Georgia here. We're talking about Bullock County. And I don't think they're going to drag their feet with going after him with the fullest extent of the law. But I believe that the best thing will be his witness. And we're going to go to the crux of how he felt at that time and if he believed that his life was in danger.
Joseph Marrone fired the weapon, we believe, anywhere between 2 and 3 times, shot and killed a 17-year-old girl who was a passenger in that car. At what point, is he permitted legally to pull out that weapon and start firing that gun?
When he reasonably believes that he's either himself or someone else is in immediate danger, and that's a subjective belief. It's immediate. If you take all the facts in the case, I mean, we're only reading what we have, and I'm sure the 4 kids in the other car have all given statements, but I mean, they started by calling him some, racial names, threatening racial names to him and her, but then they took it to another step. I mean, I think they threw something at the car and they tried to run the car off the road. I mean, down in South Georgia, I mean, if you're an African-American kid, especially in these times, I mean, that things are going on, and he legally had the gun. I mean, he had a right, to use that weapon because he was believing he was saving his life. Unfortunately, the outcome was it was a bunch of idiotic teens, and it happened to be a white female in there, and now there's an outcry for after the fact. Unfortunately, he didn't know that. He was trying to protect himself at the time, but it's emotion is now prosecuting this case, but. The case is early, and the preliminary hearing is only the first stage.
Absolutely, and we will be tracking that case, and I think that's going to be an important moment when we get to that preliminary hearing. There's a gag order on the case now, so we're not getting a lot of the facts out and what other neutral witnesses there may be to all this, but of course we'll keep an eye on it for you right here at Court TV. When we come back, it's time to hear from you, the 13th juror, and posted a video that was raising I guess a lot of eyebrows on the internet. It was a video involving a pregnant woman in a car eating ice cream and then is detained at gunpoint by police. We've got the video for you and your reaction next.
Evansville 901.
Yes, I'm over here at the mall right off of Green River Road.
Okay.
By Dee Dee Richley. Is a black Ford. She has a gun in her car. She up here fighting with another girl, and she's pulling a gun on her.
You got any?
I'm 7 months pregnant.
Okay.
What am I doing wrong?
We're trying to figure it out. Just hold on.
Here's the reason you got taken out of the car like you did. We just got called, and your car and license plate was given as the description of people that just pulled a gun on somebody at Ritzy's.
I don't have a gun. You can check my car. No worries.
I think this is going to be complete. Yeah, she said, search my car. Well, it appears that someone was mad at you.
That's why we're not trying to hold you up or anything, and we know it's embarrassing to you, and we're sorry.
Bizarre one, right? I mean, she's 7 months pregnant. She's in her car eating ice cream, and someone called 911, reported a woman with a handgun in her car with the license plate. Police respond. That's what happened. Getting your reaction to that tonight on social media. Was it handled properly? We begin with our 13th juror. Comment of the day from Jeff, who writes, I can see the similarity. Ice cream, handgun, yeah, they look alike. They both look alike. I think she got a big enemy. Whoever rang should be charged. Judge Porter, what did you see in that video, and do you think it was handled well?
Well, I think ultimately it was held well. I mean, what do you do as an officer when you get this type of a call? I mean, it puts you in between a rock and a hard place. And I think that at the end, they handled it well and with an apology that was deserved.
Sandra, tonight, it was handled correctly. They were going off information from the dispatch center, so they approached that scene on the defense. Officers calmly got her out of the car. She walked back slowly. They spoke calmly to her. It was resolved without the incident. The fact that she's pregnant is irrelevant. DeWitt Lacey, as you watch that video and the interaction between police and the public, I mean, this is what we're talking about day in and day out. Your thoughts?
Thanks for the question, Vinny. Look, I will say that I think that law enforcement handled this the way they're supposed to. They got a call about somebody with a gun, very descriptive, the license plate. So, they have to conduct at that circumstance a felony stop. I disagree that the fact that she's pregnant is irrelevant. I think that is definitely relevant. However, I don't know how law enforcement could have known that without necessarily asking her, given especially that you don't want to just, I guess, give that back to her without knowing.
Careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Careful,
exactly.
DeWitt. We're all very careful with that. I know
Yes.
exactly where you're going. Al tonight writes, the only thing I see wrong is instead of handcuffing her, have the female officer pat her down for everyone's safety, then proceed with the questions, but no need for handcuffs because she did not resist one bit. Joseph Marrone, do you have a problem with the handcuffing?
No, not when there's a gun involved. I mean, police protocols, as long as they're following it. I mean, anytime you have a gun, I mean, she was pregnant, but what happens if she was mentally ill and she did have a gun and she just decided to take the gun and shoot one of the officers, shoot someone else? I mean, could that have happened? Maybe, but let them follow the protocol. As long as they're doing their job, I think that's what's necessary for the community. And I think they apologized at the end. They did the right thing, so it worked out well.
And
Will writes, the caller. Go ahead, DeWitt.
And also, Vinny, we got to remember that there was a report that there was someone else in that car. So law enforcement didn't know initially.
That's right. The original call did talk about two different people. Will writing tonight, the caller did the right thing. She saw something odd, a lady with a gun on another person, so she calls 911. Okay, so what's the problem? There is no problem. Move on. Will, Judge Porter, I don't think there ever was a gun. I think this was someone who was calling on someone that she had a problem with her for some reason, unbeknownst to any of us. But it seems to me that's maybe where the investigation should go after the 911 caller at this point.
Right. They should be looking for that person who gave this egregious information. But, it's not about moving on. In the climate that we're in, we have to look at everything, unfortunately, with a microscope. And I think that they did it right today. They did it right with that stop and did what they were supposed to do to keep everyone safe. They weren't reckless with her or roughhousing her. And then she was free to go.
But no, tonight, with our final comment, 911 callers like her should be arrested. People are deliberately making these kinds of calls to actually get people killed. They need to make an example out of these people. And I agree with Benoit. That's a problem because we are seeing more and more of that. Hey, what a job tonight. Great to have everyone on board. Joseph Marrone, DeWitt Lacey, and Judge Tiffany Porter. Appreciate your time, your expertise, and your insight.
Thank you, Vinny.
Great to have you on the show again. Thank you so much.